yeah, firstly, I just want to say, well, I'm Bruce Talbot. To those of you that don't know, I'm sitting down in Stellenbosch, chairing this thing on behalf of Simon. Now Simon's going to take over and do the question part. And today we have Dwayne Marx, the new chairman of SAFCA, joining us, as you all know from the program. So welcome, Dwayne, and nice to finally see you in person. Yeah, I thought you're just going to take a couple, just do a bit of a question and answer, or just a bit of a discussion series. We've done this through a series of presentation of scientific research, you could say. So it's been someone presenting their findings, but I thought this is just a nice way to maybe wrap up on what's been quite a complicated year and have actual people talking, and there's been quite a strong interest out there from the group to hear what you have to say, Dwayne. So yes, hello and welcome, I think is the first thing for me to say to you.
Great. Bruce, from my side, thank you very much for the opportunity. As I say, I think it's probably my second time I'm doing one of these, so I do find them quite intriguing. I attend quite a few of them, and they add a lot of value. Yeah, and I think it's wonderful for me. It's in a nutshell, I've been in the post for about a month now. Just quickly, I obviously left the forestry industry. But I say full-time in 2019, relocated down to Hermanus, and at the same time obviously started up the commercial drone company, which I've been quite busy with. And but I've never really obviously lost association with forestry. I still am involved with sort of assistance as far as mentoring goes and advising, and obviously had a very strong connection with Jaap, who sadly passed away. And I did say, I said on a few platforms that he was an absolute legend in the industry. Be it whatever he may with his personality, he was a tough nugget, as I often said to him. But he contributed, and he started up the SAFCA Association years ago. And I was sort of, when I say closely associated, I did sit on the board for a few years, also quite a few years back. And then, but yeah, there's been a window of 2 years now where I had no interaction directly with forestry, but at the same time, I was still assisting and advising in the background with issues that were being raised, possible advice I could give. I think in a nutshell, and I think. Who was it? It was, if it's say, Francois, I think, just said, congrats on your posting. You've been through the trenches, and I think that's ultimately what it's about. I don't have an academic background like I know, and a lot of you guys do have, but I think ultimately my association with the university, my association with FSA, my association with all the big role players, I realize is absolutely critical for us to take SAFCA forward. And I've grounded myself in a very simple sort of line of thought, is that ultimately I'm here to serve our contractor community, and SAFCA must serve them as well. So in a nutshell, if you're taking over, and I think and I feel free to say it, if you're taking over something that's probably been run for 39 years by Jaap in particular, there's a certain style of management, and I'm not going to at all criticize anything that's been done there. I have the utmost respect, and I'll never change my wording, my thought process on that. But I think we need to look at a paradigm shift. We need to look at aligning ourselves with the demographic sort of changes in our forestry community, and it's probably also very good sometimes to have new blood to come and do that, and that's really my role I see going forward. But critical to that role is going to be aligning ourselves with the forestry role players, first and foremost in South Africa, and then obviously internationally as well, because we can't operate in a bubble. That's the short and sweet. So yeah, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to chat.
Great, no, thanks. A great introduction, and obviously, like I said, it's you come in at quite a difficult time, but obviously you have the ballast, it's not, it's not a complete stranger that's stepping in to take that take that role. So you've been spotted on LinkedIn all over the country already. So is that part of your startup sort of mission or policy there, to get out and see the people, or what have you been up to there?
Yeah, Bruce, 100%. Obviously, it's been a short period now. It's been 3 months. We had our board AGM in November, and at the same time we elected a few new board members. But there obviously was a bit of a cry out from the Eastern Cape contractors to firstly just pop in and just chat to one or two of the big role players there, and secondly, obviously, just to welcome Henry, who is now also part of our board. She works with Donnie at in the Tsitsikamma, Johnny Skippers, and
Yes.
and obviously, if you road trip from the Cape down that way, you pass through George, and I did know, and I hope to do a few of the role players there I could just engage with. And I happened to obviously meet up with CMO, both Ben and Andrew McEwen in my visits, and it goes without saying that CMO have a big role to play in forestry in South Africa. They obviously are playing a big role internationally as well, and that to me is one of the critical alignments that we have to look towards. I have to reach out to the specific role players to basically align ourselves to align ourselves to understand the both local and international policies far better, and just to basically get the support, because we can't operate on an island. It will never work out.
No, sure. No, I appreciate that. No, it seems that you're off to a flying start for sure. But the SAFCA that you're taking over now, how does that really look? I've been out of the country for 25 years. Everyone else sitting in the group here probably has a much better idea. But the kind of demographics of it, like where your big representation are, and how many, and what sort of percentage of the South African annual cut would you say is actually members of SAFCA? Okay,
100%. Because I just had to put up some stats quickly from our head office, and just to align myself.
Okay.
But no, no, I can kick into that. So currently we have, when I say approximately, it might be give or take 1 or 2, 310 contractors that are members of the association. In that we have roughly 26,100 staff labor that we obviously they employ, and we represent indirectly through them. And then now, of the sort of members that we now have as members, there are about 109 of those are silviculture operators, and then about 150 of them will be the harvesting stroke mechanical harvesting stroke fording operations guys. So and then our representation sort of runs, I would say our biggest representation currently is in the KZN, where we have 133 members. Mpumalanga, we have 127 members. Gauteng, 4 members. The Eastern Cape, we have 19 members. Limpopo, 3, and the Western Cape, 17, and the Northern Cape, 8. And that's sort of just more or less a snapshot of our membership. Yeah.
So quite significant, I must say. That's quite considerably large numbers that are actually represented there. Yes. I just wanted to point out to the audience that, because we're just going to run through a few questions here, but they will have the opportunity in about 20 minutes to ask questions, and you can just log your questions either in the chat or you can ask them orally when we get to that stage, and Simon will just keep track of kind of the order there, so everybody knows that you will have a chance to ask Dwayne a few questions directly as well. And then just on the contracting thing at the moment, like I said, difficult time to step in, but how is the outlook right now for contractors? We've got the COVID stop-start, and then we have interesting things with our currency, and we have also now rumors of interest rate hikes and things. But it's still optimistic, or how's it looking out there?
No, look, it's, to me, to answer that question sort of off the cuff, I would have liked to have better sort of input from the grower companies, because I think one needs to understand their cycles and their operating sort of modus and what their strategic thinking is going forward to be quite confident in what I'm going to say now. But if I look at our current representation, obviously in the industry, SAFCA specifically has withheld their contract sort of awarding contracts that's now starting to take place. So there's been a bit of a few nerves out there. My personal feeling is the moment, I say it's personal, just on the short sort of interface I've had with forestry back again, is that there's a lot of confidence for the grower companies in South Africa at the moment, given the as you say, the international sort of influence that are affecting COVID has had a huge part to play in the operations. But fortunately, I think it was deemed a what do you call it, a service that I can't really think of the word now, but that wasn't stopped.
Essential.
Yeah, it was deemed that. So basically, volumes and output remained relative during COVID. What I do know is that obviously, if you look at the big gulp or the big growers, very stringent sort of rules and regulations were put in place during the time. But generally speaking, things just kept rolling, and that's my understanding out there at the moment. The only thing is that we did find there was a bit of a knock-on was training had to stop, because so what they were trying to do is not obviously let external people that weren't core at that stage to come in. But fortunately, I think with a bit of Fitburn, a bit of SAFCA, and a bit of all the role players, discussions with the grower companies, it was allowed to happen again. What we did find is that there was for a lot of people who had now sort of walked into classes and gave classes on a one-on-one basis, had to go to a virtual setup, what they call virtual hybrid, and I was quite surprised when I attended the SAFCA training or SAFCA MPC training in Durban, in Pietermaritzburg, to see just how they had actually rolled out, how they actually got their classroom set up, and the different monitors and all the technology that's out there that just showed them that they can actually do it. So it rolled. There wasn't much of a holdback on it. Obviously, I don't think they're going to get through all the training they wanted. Regards, so surprisingly, as I say, stepping back, there's still a positive vibe out there. There's still a positive feeling out there, and I'm referring to the contracts that now have been renewed for the next few years. The contracts that are now being awarded. There's been no withdrawal of contracts or no. But as I say, without talking to grower companies, I don't have access to that information now. I don't know what the strategy is going forward, but it's at least not gloomy out there at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds good. So if we turn to more on your kind of the SAFCA and your membership sort of, not really, the benefits or the actual thing about being organized, coming from, as you might know, I come from living in Scandinavia, and there obviously forestry contractors are quite major, especially in in Sweden, Finland, and Norway. Forestry is a major industry for them, and so very large numbers of contractors, and they're very well organized. And what I mean with that is like being part of an association. Yes. But so where do you see, like for SAFCA, the real benefits for your members? To be a member of SAFCA, what is it that SAFCA really offers them that the ones that aren't members are probably losing out on?
Okay, I think first and foremost we will say that we have sort of, I think years back, and I'm not sure how long ago, there was a tailor-made sort of PL, a public liability insurance that was created. I wouldn't call it a group scheme, but basically where contractors were now actually protected in the workplace. So together with Kurt Bolden down from Forest Growers I think he's based in Nelspruit, he obviously went to the underwriters and said, listen, we need a tailor-made insurance for our contractors, but at the same time the growers were also asking that, because general insurance didn't cover, for example, a spread of fire, didn't cover some of the incidents that could be relatively unique either to silviculture, harvesting, or any form of forestry. So they came up with this PL insurance, and basically now any person working for the bigger growers needs to have a PL insurance. But what we also found is it's not a requirement from the grower company. members have actually come forward and said we'd like it because it makes sense to have something that sort of covers all the nuances that you have in the timber industry now, contracting. I think that's definitely one of the sort of step-in services that we can give. Outside of that, what we do offer in a big way is we've obviously a few years ago created what we call SAFCA NPC, which is now the training wing of SAFCA. Now, when I say training wing, they are not per se trainers. What they do is they've been sort of tasked by the two companies who are really, when I say are involved in this, have asked them to facilitate training. In other words, when I say facilitate training, they must see that the trainers are training correctly. They must take over the database for training in South Africa. They must align themselves on the CETAs, FPM CETAs and that, look for grant money, look at means and ways that we can actually develop and our contract, our base of people. So that's obviously added huge value into the industry and huge value into the market. And Pamela Naru, who heads it for us, has done an extremely good job. I'm still sort of getting completed to fields with how it's funded and where the sort of funding comes and how it slots in. But she's done extremely well. So if you ask me for two quick points to put out, it's those two. My response to that, however, is that from an association point of view, I want to at least be able to put 5 or 6. It doesn't matter how many items down the table. So that's precisely what we do in might adds value to belong to SAFCA. But that's sort of something I've tasked myself and I've tasked our board with to pick up and take off and to improve a lot of the potential sort of services or the reasons why members can belong to SAFCA going forward.
Would that include the insurance part? Would that include kind of legal assistance related to an insurance issue?
Okay, so what we do is the person involved who sort of, when I say manages the PL insurance on our behalf with the underwriters, has obviously got a legal background as well. Although he's not tasked, or it's not his scope of work as per se with SAFCA, we do ask him the legal advice, but he's not. In short and sweet, all he'll do is then he will give advice and say, my suggestion as per this is to take the following steps. But then it will be up to the individual grower to actually engage with the external service providers to assist him. So we don't have a litigation team or a team that will step in. We do, however, have solid advisory experience. In my personal capacity as well, or members within the group who we can ask for advice. And I think if you have a fire, the steps you need to take to sort of whatever you're going to do, it remains the same today or tomorrow. So that's it. But we don't have a formal litigation wing that we can assist you with anything.
Okay, now that's interesting because obviously, like in contracting, contracts are obviously a big part of what you guys work with. So that's, I just wonder how, it's quite intimidating to work with very big companies or with very small companies that you're not sure that you're going to get paid or whatever. I guess there's always a lot of challenges there. But just a last question on that area there. SAFCA, you did talk about, you mentioned about joining up with maybe internationally with other similar bodies, but do you have affiliation to other bodies in South Africa, like agricultural contractors or mining, or is there an organization that SAFCA is affiliated to?
Yes, no, we actually affiliated to a lot. Obviously, the FITPA, which is the training sort of what I call the FITPA Training Association in South Africa. We have affiliation to the FPM CETA, Forestry South Africa, the Forestry Board. So that's basically locally in South Africa. That's what we are affiliated to at the moment. They obviously are role players directly, or the synergy is very close to what we should be providing into the industry. And then internationally as well, I don't know if you asked the question now, but what we have done is there's an initiative it's basically called International Forestry Contractor Association, which has been initiated. The role players, just short and sweet, without mentioning names, will be Finland, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. I might be missing one or two. Are now trying to get off initiation into exactly the same. They'll call themselves the IFCC. we've also been approached would we be prepared to join. I see from history now is that we have indicated yes that we will be prepared to join. So it's still being formulated, it's still being set up, but the initiative has been created, and I think just to really what it's about is to endorse a what I can call it for lack of a better word, a self-regulation policy where to endorse, either endorsed by FSC or PEFC. That's the two that's the broad sort of picture I have at the moment that they'll be looking at.
Okay, that's interesting. The confederation, or I think that's what they call themselves, the European one, which represents all 27 national forestry contractors associations across Europe. Do you have any contact with them at all directly?
Absolutely nothing. So no. But as I say, this is all I'm doing is just reading up a bit about past correspondence. But yeah, there's no connection whatsoever at this stage to them.
Okay, I was wondering, Simon, maybe if people want to ask on a certain topic, we could break it up a little bit by having the odd question come in from the audience. If anyone wants to answer something on one of these topics that we're on at the moment, can just put up their hands, and well, Simon, I can't really see that myself, but we would hear from there. So maybe, listen, I definitely don't want to get into any difficult issues for you to talk to, because obviously we have representatives from both sides of contracting here. But just in general, would you say that SAFCA are satisfied with the way that contracts are issued, or the whole procedure? I mean, apart from stuff that was unforeseen like COVID and that, do you think SAFCA's standpoint could be said to be that they're generally happy with the situation, or more concerned or dissatisfied? Or you don't really have to answer that, but I mean, just to get a general impression of whether you guys think that things are working well in the country.
No, look, it's a fair question. As I say, if I'm not sure exactly who's in the room, but it doesn't really matter. I think that I represent the contractors, our members in South Africa, and if I'm asked the question, I think I must basically just respond honestly. I don't think there will ever be a time, whoever's asked this question that you're asking me now, that the response will be everybody's very happy and it's hunky-dory and it's all comfortable in that. Contracting I think is a hard industry. I think the demographics, the changes that have happened out there, the political influences on contracting, the social influences on contracting, it's a tough environment to work in. And so in a nutshell, but that's what I'm saying. You need to be a different breed of person to be a contractor. I was there for many years, and you just have to have a bit of thick skin sometimes, and to basically try and get to your end goal, the awards you want in life, or what you're achieving. So I don't think there's a harmonious relationship right now out there, but there's never been. So I'm sure that you will, between certain grower companies, certain places, the relationship will be better than it is in other places. But overall, I still believe right now there's room for improvement. And it's really, I think, possibly through just better means of communication. It's not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, to me, it's very simple. Your grower company will set a rate that he's willing to pay. The contractor either must agree or disagree to accept the rate. We can't sit. My philosophy has always been, don't sit in retrospect and complain or moan about it. You accepted the rate, and that's the way I forged my businesses. And but I think the critical thing is, and there will always be on any sort of, if you have a snag list of anything, communication can be improved and communication can be better. And I really hope that we can create platforms where we can actually do it, become the voice, possibly heard better from what our contractors are already saying out there.
Yeah, well, on that, do you think that because I think you said in the beginning that the new contracts had just been awarded and that was for 3 years, but do you think that that there's maybe some room for let's not say improvement, but for maneuvering in terms of the types of contracts, like, and especially how capitally intensive they are. So if we're teaching our students when they're depreciating machines, they must do it up to, they must expect a lifetime of 20,000 hours on a machine. Is that you know, do you feel that there's a good correlation between a contract that actually allows a contractor to make important investment decisions, and that the time period for those awarded contracts actually matches kind of what that decision has to be based on? So the lifetime of those machines, if he's going with a fully mechanized operation, for example. Okay. Would you think there's a mismatch there?
Okay, so to me, just off the cuff, I don't unfortunately have, I haven't spoken to, for example, guys who capitalize in big harvesting equipment, because that's essentially the most expensive part of the equipment we're running in forestry at the moment. So I don't know if they were, for example, if they can depreciate the machine over 6 years, actually get a 6-year contract. However, I have seen that the big operators are still operating, and I'm sure that the maturity, or not a maturity, but the common business sense has been that if I'm going to buy a piece of equipment in, and I have to depreciate it over 6 years, that I get a 6-year contract. But I'm saying it off the cuff. I don't know that for a fact. What I do know is in silviculture operations, which I was far more involved in, most of the contracts were awarded on a 3-year period by most of the growers, and I'm not talking any specific grower now. Now, if you sometimes banks were loath to lend the capital on a 3-year signed contract, where all common sense that it should be depreciated at 5 years. So and I don't think that's changed, but I haven't heard anything different. So the period of contract remains something that one really needs to consider from both sides. Especially if you're trying to capitalize a business, it's common sense that no one's going to lend you or loan you money on a 3-year contract if it should be depreciated over 5 years. So it becomes a risk on both sides, obviously.
Yeah, precisely. And for a lot of the machines, there's up to a year's waiting list, on order. So so you have to have some foresight that you have a reasonable chance of getting the contract, I guess. But just on that, what do you think are some, okay, maybe you haven't been in the post long enough, but some of the more serious discrepancies there have been, do you have any idea of that yet? Or like within that SAFCA have sort of tried to represent their members in, so let's say with the bigger growers, has it been on rates, or has it been on contract lengths, or has it been on information flows, or do you have any idea on that?
No, look, I don't have an idea, but I think sort of close to what you're asking me now is that I think, as you probably know, the standard sort of silviculture costing model has been created, and I think the short and sweet, I do know this, is that the SAFCA and try to standardize costing models throughout the contractor fraternity. So if you're working in Mpumalanga, or if you're working in KwaZulu-Natal, when you engage on rate negotiations with the client or the grower, that you were talking of the same table. And it is, I know, I was in the industry for quite a while. It took time, but eventually it became sort of an acceptable tool to be used in rate negotiations. But I do know that it's not being used throughout the whole industry, and it's quite concerning, that to me. It's and it's something that we will spend time on trying to address it, because if you don't have a base, or you don't have something that's acceptable, that basically everybody's using as a base of rates discussion, whatever it's going to be. Yes. There will be uniformity in rates, and nothing that we can actually fall back from an association point of view and assist people with. So I strongly believe that there must be a standard formal rate discussions, or a standard costing model, if I want to call it that.
Do you think that that SAFCA can help, or contribute, or do you think offers benefits, in in both silviculture and harvesting, and in small to smaller contractors and big contractors to a similar degree, or do you think that there is one specific area that would be most beneficial to be a member if you're that? Do you think that, if you get what I'm saying, that do you think if you're a very small silvicultural contractor that it's worthwhile to be a member of SAFCA?
Yeah, no, I think the smaller you are, probably the better, because
Okay.
I think we know any person, and I'm talking out of experience here, any person entering into the contracting market, you fail and you fall for the first few years, and hopefully after 4 years you're still working. A crying need for me is to actually be able to offer, mentor, take the hand of emerging contractors and actually take them through the pain years. Which could be up to 10 years, but at least for the first 4 or 5 years. So we all go out there with good intentions. We all get some form of funding to kick off and go, but ultimately, I think you very soon realize there are certain tangibles and intangibles that you either can or can't control. And a lot of times you put your head so deep into the ground or into the sand, you actually aren't looking around to see what's really happening out there. So to me, it's actually critical that we, for the industry, that we take the hands of the developing the smaller contractors and get them going. But having said that as well, is we mustn't forget that we are association and we represent the interest of all our members. And as big as you are, you sometimes do need assistance or a voice or a mechanism to actually be heard as well. And that's it, because I think being big isn't always easy, and I know that. And we must basically be able to tailor make our association services to suit, I would say, first and foremost, growing and developing contractors, and then obviously be able to still have that ear for our bigger contractors that are out there.
No, that's great. Yes, I think that's well covered. I think on the flip side of that, what would your members, would they have a benefit in terms of being awarded a contract just because they are SAFCA members, or would it be 50-50, or would they actually be penalized for being a member of SAFCA?
All right. Now, I think so right now, off the cuff, I can say there would be no added value to being a member of SAFCA to be awarded a contract. In other words, from a grower point of view, if I take in a SAFCA member, there's a certain criteria that's he's been vetted and been checked, and he aligns himself to what we want, and therefore he's going to he'll have an advantage. But exactly to follow on from what you're saying, it's to me, there's not a lot of thought, but it's basically an emerging sort of idea or thought process that I'm busy running through as well with certain of the role players in the industry to get ourselves to the point is that if you are a SAFCA contractor, you basically get rubber stamped. In other words, you are, first and foremost, I think just to keep it simple, we must basically, just for lack of a better word, say you are FSC certified contractor. Now that means that basically, and that's ultimately what every grower is chasing, it either be PEFC or FSC. You want to basically know that your product is going to be sold. We must internally try and self-regulate somehow, but it's a concept I'm talking about that's quite new and fresh in our South African forestry, and it hasn't been bandied around. It's not a policy or anything official from SAFCA yet. But to me, it makes sense to actually start walking this walk, because it's going to, I think, my mind says to me, it's going to streamline a lot of the duplication processes we're having between grower and between the contractor at the moment as well. And ultimately, if you got your head focused to be FSC or PEFC certified, you're focusing in the right direction. You're not sort of snatching at the low-hanging fruit all over, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
Okay, and so do you think that if one of your members, consistently had issues, with the growers, with his staff and with or problematic things, something, would you get to a stage where you might have to consider not kicking them out, but would you think you would have some say over encouraging them to improve their operations?
I would like to sort of just say yes. We absolutely that does happen. That can happen. Right now, that SAFCA hasn't really stood for that, or hasn't really sort of, if I can sort of lack of a better word, offered the service or actually reached out and got involved in the process, unless there was a call, as far as I understand, from the contractor to SAFCA asking advice. But so yes, though we don't really sort of do that at the moment. It's short and sweet.
Yes. No. Okay. These questions are just coming out of the blue, so I think you're managing them very well. No but listen, I see we've time's flying here now. I actually wanted to just ask you a little bit about education and research and stuff, because, like I said, research is a little bit what we are into, but there's also the whole sort of education and who the new generation of contractors that are coming up through the ranks and the schools and things. So firstly, I just wanted to ask you about education, because about research, because, you know, with my background in the north there, like I said, there are a large number of forestry contractors. It's a very important business. And there's also, of course, a large research component. So the Skogforsk in Sweden, and in Finland they have quite a few, but the research community there is quite involved actually with the contractors. And I just wanted to read up a few titles of just in the last year of research publications that have come out, and I want to ask you whether you think any of these, or this kind of research, is something that SAFCA would consider to be interesting to be involved in or not. And on the flip side of that, of course, is the POPI Act and who has access to the data and stuff. But let me just read the titles so that the audience has an idea as well. So one of them, most of them are just from this year, and that is, the first one is key drivers and obstacles for performance amongst forest harvesting service contractors, a qualitative case study from Sweden. So they're looking at the drivers and obstacles for performance. And then one says size matters, which you just said as well, an analysis of business models and the financial performance of Finnish wood harvesting companies, which is basically contractors. And then there's one, characterization of forestry contractors' business models and profitability in northern Sweden. A typology of contractors for forestry services, that was from Slovakia, and that's obviously just looking at the sizes and what kind of services they offer and stuff. And then there's one, digital transformation of forest services in Finland, a case study for improving business processes. So that just gives you some sort of idea that there's quite a lot of focus on that, really understanding the contractors' kind of business model. It seemed to be more from the contractors than from the growers' side, and how they kind of perform. And there's historically been a lot of publication looking at the size, the effectiveness, so how many people are employed, what sort of capital employment there is, and what kind of profitability they show. But do you think that we were actually just engaged with some discussions with Jaap Steenkamp and earlier this year, actually. Unfortunately, things changed there, but he was going to co-supervise a postgrad study for us on that. But do you think that this is something that your members might be interested in looking at more? And then, of course, obviously there's some considerations about who sees which numbers and things. But what's your opinion just generally on that?
No, so right off the cuff, I come from I must just sidestep a little bit. Obviously, I've been through a huge learning curve myself with other technology, and I'm referring now to drone technology over the last 3 years. So what I do realize, and what I see and what I've learned there is that research is critical for taking the processes forward. And in a nutshell, if we sit in our cocoon at the moment and we think that everything is hunky-dory, everything's going to stay the same, we're going to fall out the doorway. That's as simple as it is. So from our point of view, any form if we can assist, or we can engage, or we can become part of some form of research program that's ultimately adding value back to our growers again, because that will be the base I always use. we will definitely engage. And it's at the same time, it's great for me to engage with the role players in South Africa. Obviously, you nurturing the new sort of forestry guys that are going to come into the market soon as well. So there will definitely be synergy there, and I think it's yes, to answer your question in a nutshell, we will definitely be willing to chat, engage.
That's great. I see we have actually a question coming through, but I just want to actually just address this because in South Africa, we're just starting this Forest 21 project, which you hopefully have been involved in yourself. It's coordinated through FSA with Norman Dlamini, but all the higher education institutes are involved, and Finland and Norway, I think, are involved. It's paid for with EU money, and it's a project that's looking at basically a kind of climate smart forestry, but just as much also on entrepreneurship and what that really means and entails, and what we should be doing with our students. And that's so across the board from Fort Cox, Venda, that's NMU, and that's ourselves, and I think Technical University of China involved there. But just in bringing, firstly the base of people coming in, the new contractors. Where do you think they are sourcing from, and what kind of opportunity? And it's a very general question, probably not the best one to take this time of the day, but the next generation, are they going to come through formal education, or are they coming in from other walks of life, you could say, like other technical areas, or what do you think?
So I think, as I say, just for me to sort of get my mind around, it will take a bit of time. So I think I'm going to just skip that question, but I'd like to engage. I do obviously have sort of a thought on it. I have an opinion on it, but it's going to be a long-winded one.
Yeah. All right. No, that's fine. I just, because we are being pressed. I think maybe it's interesting for the rest of the audience to know that this project is underway, and actually they're sending out questionnaires this week to a lot of the industry players, and they will be asking their opinions on all of these things. So it's especially about that, how much emphasis there needs to be in the education to get people to think a little bit outside the box, and not just be working for a salary when they get out of an education. But it's definitely isn't that easy. It's not just something that you go and do. But anyway, that was, I think, the question that came in. Simon, maybe you can just confirm, because I can't really see from here that I think it was about your recruitment really into the sector. And I think you might agree that it's really just as a natural flow of people in from different areas. I mean, the contractors that you know of.
Agreed 100%. So I don't really know the criteria for selection. It's basically just people in the right place at the right time. If you do find a lot of when I say cross-border, when I say from Mpumalanga to, for example, Tsitsikamma, if you're a big operator up there, and you've been in the game for a while, you've got a good name, the opportunity does exist that you can then move from across borders and that as well. And that's how we've seen a few of our big operators either grow or close down operations, for example, up in the north, and move down to the south. And incumbent contractors, I'm not sure exactly what the criteria is that the growers are basing it on. So I can't really. I just need to wrap my mind a bit about that, around that one. Yeah. What you do,
sure.
If SAFCA, Bruce, we've got the pre-university and forestry in-training program of grower companies trying to achieve basically improve entrepreneurship. So it's talking very much in line with what you're saying at the moment. There's obviously is a dying need out there. There's also a new forestry technician, a QCTO. Now, I don't know what QCTO stands for, but that's what I was given. Qualification there. They can also be used as an avenue in the industry to improve skills amongst the graduates as well. So absolutely, I have a personal opinion about it. I don't know what the industry's opinion is. As I say, that's why I'm not going to talk much about that now.
No, sure. Off the top of your head, what would you say is the people that move in there, what do you think the personal or the character traits that you need to be? Obviously, you have to be pretty resilient, but do you have just anything off the top of your head what you would recommend a person that's going into that? Obviously, a lot of knowledge as well on the area you're going to be contracting in.
So I think what you're finding and what I'm seeing in the industry is the grower companies are definitely aligning if it's a new contractor or the incumbent contractors from a socio-political sort of setup as well. Now, I might be saying so, but I've seen that. In other words, that they must be comfortable that the incumbent contractor will be able to operate in the given conditions in the area. And we know sort of, when I keep referring to socio-political, whatever, but there are different, what I can call possibly hotspots or more difficult contracting areas in South Africa to work. Some places they'll be quiet for years. Some places we know, and if you go there, you can have mini fires there, and your labour is going to be disruptive all the time. But that's just so they obviously have to tailor make or be very cognizant of the incumbent contractor, that he's got the ability, he's got the support, or he's got the know-how to actually manage that situation. Yeah, so I think that's really it from my side on that one.
Yes, okay, thanks, John. I think, just time-wise, because a lot of people have to get back to work. So I think rather than them just disappearing, I think we should try to have some sort of formal closing, because I could keep chatting to you for a while. Obviously, seeing that you're quite the drone guy, that's pretty interesting as well. We haven't even got really into that, but maybe we should just say to the audience that's here, it's very nice that they could join us, but maybe from your side, you just want to say a formal kind of goodbye, and then the ones that want to stick around for a chat are welcome to do that.
Yeah, as I say, I'm to whoever has joined the chat, thanks for attending. Thanks for the interest shown, and I don't know who I'm specifically speaking to, so but yeah, thanks for being here, and please reach out, ask me questions in a personal capacity, or I'm available. It's Dwayne at SAFCA.co.za, and contact me regarding anything you'd like to know about SAFCA or our stance. Or I'm still obviously finding my feet, and I will still get the clear message from our members. That's ultimately who we are presenting. Short and sweet, just to let you know, we have done a survey that I sent out there. I've got a consulting company to push out a survey into industry to go and get a feel or the climate from our members towards SAFCA. Really, that's and it's a well constructed questionnaire that went out, and as a board, we're going to be meeting on the 12th of January again to really specifically look at the feedback we got from our association and from our members, because we must basically listen to what's been said and realign ourselves and our strategic sort of thinking and our operations going forward off that as a base. So that's just a quick recap, and thanks for everybody for attending and for the chat.
Great, and thank you for making the time available to talk to us here on the last first Thursday's meeting of 2021. So yes, I think we will. Simon, that question, do you think it was answered okay, or do we need to put it to Dwayne directly, that question that came in?
Yeah, it's fine.
I think so, but Martin, do you have any? Did that cover your question properly? And for that matter, are there any other questions to Dwayne?
The question was on the recruitment, as far as I saw it flash by here.
Yeah, it was. Could you get an explanation of the recruitment process for individuals? Maybe a bit more clarity from your motion.
Yes, well, I think it's difficult with the recruitment because we're not saying about appointing someone, but just how people get into contracting. I think that's more the thing, how do you end up being a contractor? And I guess that's quite. You did say something about that. It is a little bit by chance and a bit by being in the right place at the right time, I suppose.
Yeah, just to quickly recap on that, there's no there's no step-by-step process to get into contracting. I've seen ad hoc contractors coming. Generally speaking, you would have a foundation or base in forestry. So in other words, you'd been a forester, either having worked for a forestry company or you'd be aligned. I came out of corporate into forestry, for example, so there will definitely have been the connection with forestry to step into it. I don't think that will, I know for a fact, no operations manager of a contract will be accepted or considered if he's got no background or basically the ability to prove the ability to actually do what he's tendering for.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. If you don't know what you'll find it very difficult to survive the first few years, even if you get the contract, if you don't have a very good understanding of what it's about, the game, because it's very marginal, isn't it? You have to, it's the margins are small, and you have to have a very efficient operation to make it, and so you have to be relatively expert in what you're doing.
Absolutely.
To let that happen. There don't seem to be any questions coming through. I think we'll close here at 2 o'clock. But Dwayne, maybe say something just quickly on your own drone operations. Then, if there's nothing more on the SAFCA side, what have you been? Are you more into the drone as a service, as in spraying and things, or drone as in data collection through imagery and that?
Okay. So short and sweet, I think everybody knows it's quite a tedious process to get your ROC, which basically yes. Operator's license. So it took us, I think, 3 years, cost us short and sweet, a few $100,000 to have it bagged eventually. That's without the sort of hardware, which is your drones and that. So I threw a very wide net because you don't know what the market is. It's not as if there's 1,000 opportunities for you to step in once you got your license. Another learning curve, but I mean, I've been taught there's a few. So we eventually ended up doing focusing more on enterprise inspections, if I can call them that. So either wind turbine, solar panel, solar farm, and then quite a big mix of also mapping, as you're talking about now. Because we align ourselves close to agriculture, we act on behalf of clients to go and do mapping for them. Sometimes for legal claims, for example. But at the same time, also, I've got no doubt in my mind that the technology is and will be of huge benefit in the agriculture / forestry environment as well. And we just recently ran a field day at Weza, which I initiated, unfortunately, due to this. I couldn't go through medical reasons, make it down. I was a bit worried about a few things, and but where LiDAR was shown, thermal imagery was shown, obviously the agri spraying, which you refer to now, which you all know, that's the spraying capability. They had the quick mapping was also shown there, how fast one can actually map a situation like a fire, and they also showed there were how you can use drones in fire, not fire prevention really, but for fire, not for burning of fire breaks and that. So there was a beautiful array of equipment showing there, a lot of interest from a SAFCA point of view, and also with CMO, I think in alignment, and with FSA, we as role players, we're going to look at doing another drone field day in Pietermaritzburg in the year, and then probably up in the north as well. I'd like to be involved in 2 more of those. So yeah, that's it. The technology is out there. It is becoming competitive. The rates, the volumes, and I believe it's an absolutely huge future in drones in forestry as well.
Agreed. That's good. Okay. Thanks, Dwayne. Yes. Okay, Simon. I think that I'm going to have to ask you to just say goodbye, because you. I mean, not for good, but for this year, because this is your series, and I think that this is the final one of the year. I think we obviously won't be meeting for the first one in January. That's everyone's still recovering there from not being at work, and I presume that we're going to continue the series in the first week of February. So Simon, I'm going to, Dwayne, thanks again for joining me for a discussion here. And then we're just going to hand over to Simon here to just say, I think, goodbye to everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bruce. Dwayne, thank you so much for the time. I'm glad you put it all together, and it's been a great hour. Yeah, just background, yes, Bruce and the rest of the audience will start up again in February. Gives us a bit of a break to find some more exciting presenters. Yeah, it's looking forward to interacting with you and engaging with you further, Dwayne. It's been great, Bruce. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, as is customary, I'll publish this presentation or this interview online, and I'll send everyone the link. And yeah, we'll catch up in the new year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good festive season, if you like to call it that. I don't know, on camera.
Right.
Good, thanks, Dwayne. That's been nice to hear from you, and very interesting to hear that SAFCA is actually such an active organization. So.
Yeah, no, it is. I think there's obviously a lot more that we can do, and that I look forward to doing. If you look at our base and our membership, we've actually got a huge amount of members out there, and I just believe that we must tailor make our services to provide a better service to them. That's really all I'm looking at doing, and yeah. So yeah, we've got some exciting times lying ahead. Yeah.
Yes, that's why I was asking about the legal thing, actually, just from my background, because I would think that was the thing they had the most issues with, when you have so many, I mean, with contractors all are in a contract, with somebody. So it's the legalities around that. I'm sure our situation here is much more simplified, just because we do have a more uniform way of doing things, but still there are issues that arise in the legal side of things that need, for a smaller contractor, that they obviously have challenges with. And what I actually didn't bring up in this meeting that I should have was on the data side, and I actually didn't really want to get into too much discussion around it, but that's from a research side. We of course very interested in looking into the data that comes off the machines, because you're getting the productivity data, and you're getting the tree sizes, and you're getting things, but there's also a bit of collateral damage to that, because people can get insight into each other's performance and see what time you started work in the morning, and you see, the machine really captures really everything, GPS position and stuff. So there have to be ways of keeping that data anonymous and stuff. And I think, the data itself offers a lot of opportunities to the big growers as well, because they're getting a tree by tree data that's measured, times 10 million cubes a year. So that's quite significant amounts of data that are coming in, that can be actually separated from the contractor's important data of productivity rates or fuel consumption or time of day or anything like that. So that's an area that certainly, where I came from in Norway, the Forestry Contractors Association and the research, or some legal people, worked a lot on trying to ensure that they could come up with a good solution for how that data was going to be used in the future. And it's interesting because that data has been available since about 1990, but no one's really done anything with it until now. So it's taken, what is that, nearly 30 years it's just suddenly proliferated, and everyone's now very keen on getting their hands on the data. So
Bruce, just understanding that you would say that you would like access to that data, but you've been blocked.
No, we haven't been blocked. We haven't. We've actually the contractors that we've dealt with in the country here through Simon mostly in Pietermaritzburg have been very, very accommodating and very open. It's just that I think we realize that we are working with sensitive data, and we need to have a proper formal agreement around that. And well, we do actually have such agreements in place, but it's the thing is more that that everyone wants a piece of the pie. So research is one thing, but managers, the actual contractors that work for private forest owners, their data is in the same system for different forest owners. For example, if a contractor goes out and works for 3 different private forest owners, they're actually accumulating data that legally somehow can partly belong to, and this is in Scandinavia. After 30 years, they've only had the legal thing sorted out in the last 2 or 3 years of who actually owns that data. And I think what they agreed on was that everybody has a right to a part of it, even though it's the contractor that collects the data. The tree data is rightfully, it has to be shared with the owner of the tree, and the productivity data with the contractor. But you could have like an NCT organization, which is the Forest Owners Association, that could hire in a contractor on behalf of a private forest owner. So you actually have a three-way a 3-way split, because the NCT equivalent want to know how much was harvested and stuff, and the forest owner wants his tree data, and the contractor who owns the machine wants to keep the data himself as well for his own good. And one of the things we've done there is developed this tool that we'll talk to you about that separately, but it's an online tool that the contractors can actually, it looks similar to what they get from John Deere and stuff on their desktop, but it actually already has been cleaned of sensitive data.
Okay, now that's awesome. Look, I think you talk data, and I've heard the terminology. And as I said, I've been in a huge learning curve with metadata, and when I was being I go shoot for take pictures of a wind turbine, for example. It's got no contrast, and then I try and process it. And the guy says, "No, your metadata is wrong." But what I did learn is that how important it is if you're there to collect data, because there are so many passes, and I'm not even talking about harvesting now, even silviculture. You've been up in the north, so you know that there are completely automated planting machines up there, and that to me are brilliant. I visited operations in Chile in 2018. I saw the Brachy and I saw the Risotech machines up there. I was exceptionally impressed. The only downfall, not only downfall, the only sort of tone down on the whole thing would be that the capitalization, for example, one of those things from a silvicultural point of view was putting into the same ballpark as a big harvesting machine now. So we were always a bit nervous. And you talked about tenure of contract. It's always been risky to go and put that kind of money out there. And that's why we didn't, So, but there's room and there's space for it. Absolutely. So what I also did pick up is they obviously, as you know, all these planting machines have it's a task. It's more, let's lack of a better word, it's task, or there's some form of GPS system on it that actually go and pinpoint exactly where each plant is planted. Now, if you modernization operations, or if you want data, if you want real data, it's a very inexpensive way to actually create a huge database that can be somehow to programs that create huge information, valuable information. It's remarkable. I absolutely love it. So it's great.
It is, but it's all associated with somebody's work productivity and whether they did the area that they said they did, or they did it in on the wrong site or whatever. So it all has its sensitivities, and this POPI Act is part of it. But there is a big legal side that's opening up when we're going with these big data solutions. So like what you're talking about, but on the harvester, it's measuring every single tree, every 10 centimeters of length, timestamps, everything. And once you start to use that in the under these new laws and things, then those things have to somehow just be penciled out in how we're going to address that, and the whole industry will have to join that discussion, because with the increased mechanization of harvesting, you are collecting that data. There are these the chainsaw little Still and Husqvarna have got the little sensors on the chainsaw that's recording how many hours it's working and not working. It's not even, we don't even know if it's legal to check to check that or not. And then of course, like you say, the planting, even the pitting, the impact pitter that has is collecting the data. So there is, and I mean, that data really needs to be used, because it can be very beneficial to use it economically. It can really improve efficiencies. So it's not that we can just leave it under a bush. We have to bring it out and let it face the light of day and use it to the best of its advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, but we will definitely engage. So I must say thanks to Simon for reaching out. It's when I stepped into the post, I was on LinkedIn, sort of seeing his post sliding by mine. I thought, oh, and then all of a sudden it just was inevitable. I was going to talk to him, and then he just happened to pop something out there. And so, yeah, I think from my side, the survey, I'm looking very forward to actually getting survey results back.
Yes.
I've got a feeling what it is, but it's also not always a nice feeling for your team. But I said they must trust me. There's certain things you can't keep winding the clock back on this. We have to go forward, and we have to do something slightly differently, I believe, to serve our contractors and our members.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm quite keen to see the results coming from that. But yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, there's so much innovation happening out there. There's so much new technology out there. It's flying past, and it's actually very, very exciting to see what's happening in the industry. I still would like to get an exact feel on or understand the sort of short-term, medium-term, long-term thinking of the growers, the big growers in South Africa. I don't know that, because that obviously has. Well, it doesn't matter to me much, because I'm actually not a operator anymore, but I'm still a role playing what we're doing in SAFCA at the moment. I'd really like to understand it a bit better.
There is a lot to be understood there. I think they also, I think, trying to understand what a good model is. There's this whole discussion of outsourcing to own ops ratios, and what you can really use that for, and how many of those they should have. And there's the whole thing of, like, I try to ask about the contract lengths and things, because we take that 3-year thing, but in reality it's not actually useful at all. It's also a question of how much should the companies co-invest with the contractor and ensure that the contractor actually grows in capability and competence, or just let market conditions dictate whether they get a new contract or not. So those kind of things they're not easy to deal with. I mean, I know the companies have been dealing with them for years, and but it needs a kind of, and the difference with the countries where I've come from is that because it's a major industry in the country, they've actually put a lot of people into those environments to try to work with the companies on what the best policy for the nation is. And it's interesting, because a country like Sweden, Sweden, they're very different. The industry always approaches research to get involved, which I've never seen in another country. And then secondly, they basically always are trying to do things for the national forest industry. It's not the internal competition is much smaller than the national competition. So they're trying to keep the Swedish forest industry competitive against other countries, much more than internally trying to play those things. So that's, but I mean, it's different, because they're not they are export based, but I guess it's not that different in the end. But there's very strong focus on the national industry. Even though there are these big companies that that there's some huge forest companies in between, but a lot of the work they do is kind of open access to anybody.
Okay.